My dad and his friend hiked the long trail when they were 16. I saw the slides one rainy day, fragments of a world of retro packs and grainy mountains flickering softly before my eyes. Nostalgic alpine magic taking the form of celluloid and captured light. I was head over heels enchanted. Growing up, my family spent a lot of time outside. Before I could even walk, my parents had me strapped in a backpack, climbing up mountains. Hiking was a family affair, and my weekends were spent with my cousins, sweating in the sunlight. It wasn't until our schedules got busy and those hazy hiking days dwindled that I truly realized their magnitude. My sophomore year of college left me feeling particularly broken. I had somehow found myself in a big city where skyscrapers outnumbered trees, and I walked on concrete instead of dirt. I was restless, claustrophobic. I ached so badly for blue skies and open spaces and adventure. And in my daydreams, those grainy slides kept resurfacing from somewhere deep in the back of my brain. The Long Trail is the oldest long-distance hiking route in the United States. Constructed between 1910 and 1930, it runs 273 miles through the entire state of Vermont. You can begin in Massachusetts and walk to Canada, or the other way around. And somewhere along the way that summer after sophomore year, I decided that I wanted to hike it for myself and document the journey. I had never truly backpacked before, never slept in a shelter or trekked for multiple days in a row. With only 2 weeks to my chosen start date, I began to frantically purchase used cameras on eBay. I scrambled my dad's old backpacking gear into a pile on the living room floor. I convinced my cousin Alan to walk with me for the first week. I relayed my plans excitedly to a chorus of rolled eyes in the supermarket. But day by day, my gear pile grew, as did my excitement. The night before we left, I pressed record on my first official shot of the documentary. I have this nagging internal need to capture, to snag little moments as they happen. As an 80-year-old, I want to be able to stumble upon a box of old photographs, thanking my younger self for clicking the shutter. And that's what I was setting out to do on this trip, to add to that fraying box.
Okay. Well, this is for Alan.
See how heavy it is.
It's kind of heavy.
It's not bad. A couple of pounds.
We leave the next morning at dawn. Flustered and squeaky-faced and clean, we arrive at the trailhead giddy and sleepy, buckling up our hip belts with a confident click. We wave brave goodbyes to the camera and embark, naive and excited, and not really realizing what we were getting ourselves into. This first day is clunky and humbling, figuring out how to trudge uphill with 35 extra pounds on our backs, and still remembering to capture those initial fleeting moments. I think the most number of clips come from this day, and I walk with my camera around my wrist, pressing record often. Both spine-tingling and back-breaking work, we soon learn of the hearty exhaustion that 13 miles in the woods brings at the end of the day. I turn off my camera and write a letter to Vermont in my journal, something I've been waiting to do for a long while. I still feel too clean, too foreign, I write. But soon enough, your woodland grime will engulf me, and I will settle in among your trees. Over the next few days, our legs get muddier and our rhythm smoother. Our heavy packs still dig into our hips and collarbones, but along with our blistered feet, they too soon callous and become no longer a worry. These first days on trail are magical and blissfully exhausting. We instantly bond with sweet trail friends of all ages and personalities. Calling each other by eccentric trail names, we soon leave our old identities behind. Hootie and Roby One welcome us to trail life. Brother-in-laws from New Hampshire, I soon realized that they are a real-life version of Oscar and Felix, the odd couple. One a young, silly soul with a certain zest for storytelling, and the other quieter, more reserved, but with no less of a twinkle in his eye.
We are recording.
Magnet, our sweet friend who started the trail within minutes of us, instantly scurrying on by, unperturbed by neither the weight on her back or the heat of the day. Sly, named for his resemblance to Sylvester Stallone. Alan and I soon become Volt and River, joining the pack and beginning anew. I laugh more than I have in a long time this week, and it feels like the summer camp I was never brave enough to go to as a kid. I do a fairly good job of documenting this first week, making sure to press record at least a few times every day. When we come to a lake or mountain top, I set up multiple cameras, hoping that at least one will translate. I experiment and play around with what moments to film, how to prop up the camera, when it's worth my while to set up a shot to walk through, and when I should just walk. I try out interviews, time-lapses, B-roll, but in the end, it's the little candid moments that are captured when people forget the camera's on that are my favorite.
Alan's cool.
Damn
Alan, that's baller.
Oh, yeah, put that safety bar down.
God, that's a profile pic and a half. Are you kidding me?
Get out there.
As we walk, my friends make fun of me for carrying so many pounds of cameras over these mountains. And as we fall deeper into trail life, I begin to agree with them.
I want to know how many pounds of cameras you're carrying.
Yeah, I don't even want to think about it.
Wait, is that a different
It's just,
camera?
yeah, it's just on video, though, so just smile.
Which camera's the other one?
They're both mine.
During sacred moments, I try to keep my camera away as much as possible, turning it on only for little snippets here and there.
Oh, yeah. Can you stop just, like, filming my life?
Nope.
Okay. Just figured I'd check.
And then, after about a week of waltzing on these muddy trails with grinning hikers, I just didn't want to take out my camera at all. Moments are fleeting. I guess that's the frustrating magic of them. At first, I felt a duty to capture, a self-induced anxiety to make sure that I could have something tangible to cling on to years later. But as the miles passed underfoot, and as we slept outside in the cool mountain air, something gradually changed. And as nostalgic as they may be, a photograph, or a video clip, or a journal entry will never be able to truly transport you back to a moment in time. As week 2 rolled around and friends parted for different destinations, so did my cameras.
Best to River. Thank you. Bye.
Yay! Best one ever. Thanks, Hootie.
Each day, I would leave another journal page empty, another roll of film unexposed. And I felt good about it. The initial restlessness that I had felt to document everything fell softly away, and I began to minimize. Backpacking is one of those experiences in life where you're truly immersed. You're in it, whether you like it or not. And it soon becomes natural to lose yourself in the mundane moments that add up to those beautiful mountain days. By the end of my second week on trail, I fell into a state of deep presence that I hadn't felt in a long time. Instead of illuminated screens, I stared at muddy earth for 8 hours a day. I bathed in natural bodies of water, breathed clean air through my nostrils. I talked to people with our eyes locked tight, conversing in the flesh and not through comments or likes or texts. My dad walks with me for a few days, resurrecting his retro red pack, which stands out gorgeously amongst the juicy green pines.
Well, I want to thank the guy who brought the ladder up here. That was very helpful.
And after a while, I wanted to see these people not through a lens, but with my own eyes, my own sight. And just as it had initially felt sinful not to record a perfect moment, it now felt human to just leave my camera turned off in my pack. My final days on trail were left almost completely undocumented. I have a few iPhone snaps taken by my family at the end of the trip, but that's about it. However, it's these days that weigh most heavily on my mind. They're still very real to me, even though I have no visual proof of their existence. When I close my eyes, I can still feel the glorious warm sun on my face after days of walking through cold rain. The belly laughter and cool nights and deep mud and radical summits are still on the tip of my tongue. And I feel no sense of anger or regret at surrendering those moments to presence, for they still live vibrantly in the middle of my mind. But even still, I look back on these silly little clips with wonder and love and gratitude. My heart swells over these precious images of sweet people living on the depths of my hard drive. I think my 80-year-old self will be pleased with what I have captured, and what I have left alone to the moment. And as I've adjusted back to civilized life, this balance between documentation and presence haunts me still. It's a never-ending practice, one that I'm finally coming to accept. But what I do know is that sometimes it can be just as lovely to leave a moment alone, allowing it to freely pop up again in your brain on your next plane ride or long walk. It's important to note that this is by no means a how-to guide or a solid answer to the questions of documentation. This is merely a personal meditation, a musing on what happens when cameras are brought into a world of trees and lakes and brooks. Is there truly a place for them? I believe there can be, as long as you remember to soak in a few sunsets with only your eyes, a couple of peaks without a photograph, a handful of conversations unrecorded. Sometimes you just need to live for your 20-year-old self, then and there and now.